This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business that Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. Today's guest is setting up an interesting business. It's based on his previous, well, not previous career, his career he's still in actually. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. A really nice guy doing some really great work. So, but before we go there, just to remind you that my book is in that book. I talk about a 7-step process, and I will be referring to that 7-step process later on in the show because it's all about understanding how we stay motivated. And if we're running a business, getting the measure of the business, and that's the 7 steps I talk about. If you'd like to support the show, you can now use the Buy Me a Coffee link, which will be either in the comments, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes, where you can contribute by just clicking Buy Me a Coffee. And if you buy 2 coffees, then I will be more than happy to send you a copy of my book. So look out for that. Any contributions are very gratefully received to keep the show on the road, as they say. Right, without further ado then, let's bring on today's guest. Welcome, Jonny.
Hi, Mark. How are you? You okay, mate?
I'm very well. Looking forward to our conversation in just a moment. But before we do that, let's give you the opportunity to introduce yourself properly.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jonny Bevan. I'm the police burnout coach. I think we're going to talk a bit more about what I do in a moment. But basically, I'm still in the police at the moment. I work on a child protection team in Bristol, but I also started my own business, which is helping police officers reduce stress, become more productive, and just get the love back for the job, really. And I also work with people outside of the police.
Fantastic. Jonny, brilliant. So I think we should start from the beginning. What got you into all this? Essentially you're a coach. So what is it that got you into coaching?
Well, like I say, I've been in the police now. I keep saying 16 years, but it's coming up 17 years now, which is crazy. But I've been in the job 17 years, and I went through, like, when I joined, it was the traditional way of uniform. Then you decided your path, and mine was CID. So I went onto the squads, proactive squads, and I loved it. It was just like really good fun. Didn't really worry if they didn't pay me to do it. But then when I joined CID, I joined in 2013, and I started dealing with like high-risk domestic assaults and child protection, and things just started feeling a bit more serious. And because I noticed I was a bit of a perfectionist, not a bit of a perfectionist, very much a perfectionist, and my strategy was just to work harder and do more, I found in that environment, I got very close to burnout a couple of times. And the notable time really was when we were on an operation. It was nationally the biggest operation they'd done at that time. It was an undercover operation. And we had loads going on at home as well, doing loads of DIY stuff, and I got really close to burnout, to the point where my wife was phoning up saying he's going to pop, he's going to go, to my sergeant, my inspector, but I could never see it. So then, sort of to cut a long story short, my wife got into coaching. She got into coaching, and I thought it was a load of rubbish. I thought it wasn't for me.
That's nice. She was really pleased to hear that from you.
Well, she was telling me that we had all this stuff going on at home. We were washing up in the bath. We had no downstairs. We ran out of money. I had all this stress at work plus the stress at home, and I was really ready to pop. She found out about coaching, and she started telling me that my stress was nothing to do with my work and nothing to do with the builder who couldn't plaster my ceiling properly. Yeah. And I found that really, really hard to deal with. And after about, so it went on for about 6 months, 6 to 9 months, and eventually I realised I had to do something. And I was lucky enough to be, I was asked to help someone on her course, like be a stooge, to be a practice client. And I did it thinking I was just helping them, not that I needed it, because obviously I didn't need the help. Everything else needed to change around me. And it just opened my eyes to my real problem, really.
Mm.
I was this perfectionist who feared failure and who feared what other people thought. And it just changed everything for me. So then I decided to certify as a coach because it helped me so much. And I thought I want to help police officers. So I went back into this environment of child protection where I had escaped from. It took me 2 years to get out. So I went back in to see if it worked. And everything I worked, I applied there, and it just changed my whole experience. Really, I was in this job, which I then loved, and I got my balance back, and it wasn't the stress wasn't creeping into my home life. So then that's what I now do with sort of other police officers.
So Nikki got her husband back. That's a
Nikki,
win-win. Sounds like
yeah,
a good
exactly.
outcome. So I think we should rewind slightly there because I think the word burnout's used a lot, and I think that we don't want to assume that we understand what that word means. So it best probably comes from you. What's your definition of burnout as you see it?
Well, yeah, because it's interesting because the World Health Organization, they define it as a syndrome, so like not a medical condition, and they say it's conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. So you're stressed and you're not managing it, and they say it's very much work based. As I see it, it's just this closed loop of high expectations, self judgment, and low reward, and it typically affects the type A personalities, the fixers, the high achievers.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you've got these really perfectionist high standards, almost when you really question them, really ridiculous high standards. Can't make any mistakes. When you do make a mistake, you're really self-judgmental, you're really self-critical, and of course, when you can't work your way out of the problem, you're used to just working harder and harder and solving it. But when that strategy no longer works, you lose that identity as the fixer and you become very unfulfilled. Because you're a perfectionist, you find it very difficult because you're not performing at that standard. And then I think you just get that dissociation from the job. You get very resentful.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my sort of definition of it. And I think it's not just in work. I think we see parent burnout. I think it's anywhere. If you're that perfectionist type,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be sort of susceptible to it, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, this is linked closely to stress, which is another thing that you talk about, burnout and stress being your sort of main topics. So, how do the two link together? Are they sort of mutually exclusive, or is it something that you are two different things?
No, I see that they're just linked. Really, I think like how I sort of show people is that we're designed to feel stress. And the problem is, my approach is a little bit different in the sense of everything I've seen before was saying, don't feel stressed, get rid of your stress. And I was like this. As soon as someone said to me, because I lost my temper at work once, I was one of the second times I really got close to burnout, lost my temper, I was a bit of a desk thumper, shouted, hit the desk, broke the keyboard, and I burst a blood vessel in my eye and lost my voice. And someone said to me, if you knew what happened inside your body, you'd never get stressed again. But
Mm.
then I get stressed about feeling stressed. I think I'm killing myself. And what I've realized is we're designed to feel stress. It's this system inside. It's like a big switch, and it turns on when we're in danger, and then when we're out of danger, it will self regulate and come out. But of course, our brain, how it's evolved, can now anticipate danger in the future, which isn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're constantly in this state. So actually, for me, all the burnout is when we're in this constant state of stress. It's like driving a car in first gear everywhere. Like that first gear will get you out of trouble, but if you drove around all day in it, your car is going to blow up. And I think for me, it's just spending too long in that state and not being able to bring yourself out. So it's not that I don't feel stress now, but I can go into it, I can recognize it, and I can bring myself out without removing myself from the situation. That's how I sort of explain it.
Yeah, I think we all need a little bit of stress, don't we, just to get us sort of fired up a bit, don't we? And whether that's actually stress or not, I don't know, but it's we just do need that sort of drive. It's when you see people that, let's for instance, people that have just retired and they've not really got the head round actually what retirement is. They sort of, yes, they remove all their stress, but actually they sort of lose their fire and they don't seem to have anything to get them out of
Mm.
bed, and ultimately they just lose direction and they haven't really got any purpose. And I've come across this so many times with ex-employees when I was working in retail, and it's about, understanding that we do need to have something to get us out of bed in the morning, and that's something that driven maybe a little bit by stress, and but we just got to maybe manage it and make sure that it doesn't overwhelm us. I suppose that's the case, isn't it?
I think for me, the thing that you don't want to do is become, what I see is people becoming dependent on needing to feel stress. Like you say,
Hmm.
when you're focused, you're basically in a small amount of stress. Like you've got a bit of adrenaline and that going in, and that's what creates the focus. But what I see a lot of is people become dependent on the stress. So like they have a job to do, a task, whatever it might be, and then they procrastinate, leave it to the last minute, and then they become dependent on that stressed, pressured state to get
Yeah,
things done. And I don't
yeah,
think that is healthy. I pretty much know is not healthy. But like you say, it's the fact that you experience stress in your day doesn't mean that you're taking years off your life. But it's recognizing where the stress comes from, being able to self-regulate and move yourself out. It's when you stay in it. It's when you're in. If you're I could work a 12-hour day, be pretty stressed throughout that day, then come home and not switch off. That would be where it'd be a problem, I think.
yeah. That's interesting. Interesting. Anyway, I think we should delve a bit more into what coaching is about. And we've heard that we are very thankful to your good lady for introducing to coaching, as you thought it was a load of rubbish. But now, obviously, you don't think it's a load of rubbish. You actually see the transformation that it brings for yourself and obviously for your client. So, tell us a bit more about what coaching is, because I think there's a bit of misrepresentation and misunderstanding around what coaching is.
Yeah, and what I've realized is there's so many different types. Like when I first started coaching, I only knew my way,
Hmm.
but there's so many different types. Like you might go to a coach, and I think some people are put off because if they go to a business coach, what I see is they get given this huge list of to do. You're going to do this, and then they're sort of checked off the next month when they come back.
Yeah.
But the coaching I do is very different in the sense of it's very what we call causal coaching. It's very much all about the beliefs and the thoughts that drive the action. So if someone comes to me and they're overworking and they're feeling stressed in their job, they will obviously think the job is creating the stress or their workload is what's making them overwork. But what I show them is, and I give them the tools to be able to do this themselves as they move on, is actually it's the beliefs they hold. So for me, it was my perfectionist beliefs, the thought that I had to do everything right first time, that I didn't want to get anything wrong, I didn't want to be judged. And what I do is I speak to them and I we uncover those beliefs, all those thoughts that are driving, because that creates our feelings, which drives our action.
Hmm.
And then what we do is we then it's really down to them. I sort of shine the light on what's going on for them. And then if they want to change it, I help them change those beliefs to create different results for themselves. And it's really what I found was because we all know what we need to do, like with the action. If someone says I'm procrastinating, I've got this job and I'm watching Netflix instead of doing my work, you know what the answer is. You just do the work and switch the Netflix off.
Hmm.
But there's things driving. It's like a computer program driving all that behavior. So what I do is I uncover what's going on, and it could be beliefs from their childhood, but it's not counselling, it's not therapy, it's not going back. It's very much about like what you're thinking now is creating your experience now, and
Hmm.
helping them then work on letting go of those beliefs, and they see very quick changes because as soon as you start questioning these beliefs that you hold, maybe you've had handed down to you, or like in the police we have like a phone's always got to be answered, so everyone's rushing around answering everyone's phones and they're always stressed and panicked. But actually when you address that, that's just a belief that doesn't need to be, you don't need to keep yourself. Then the running around answering the phone stops. And it's really about addressing the cause of the problem rather than the symptom, which I find a lot of people sort of address the symptom, they go in and tell you what to do. So,
Mm.
I, and that's what I like about this is when people come to me, it's never me saying this is what you should do. It's about going, what do you want? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And then I'll go, this is why you're not there. Do you want to do the work to get there? And then help
Yeah.
them get there.
That's interesting because there's so many times when you come across people that have got a certain belief that they hold on to, and then that belief then leads on to actions, and those actions lead on to outcomes. And if the outcomes aren't what you want, then ultimately you need to, like you said, come back to the beliefs because ultimately that's where everything starts, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they can be, like you say, so ingrained, and it can go back to childhood.
Mm.
The realization that something happened back in your childhood is now still affecting the way you turn up at work and all
Mm.
those sort of things is quite a revelation to some people, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, I think the biggest blocker, because I probably work with people that are probably sort of round about my age, like in their 40s, and the biggest thing is they go, "Oh, I've always been this way. I'm too old now," and you realise it's just the brain not wanting to change. And when you map out and you go, you've actually probably got more in front of you than you have behind you because you haven't got to go to school and university. But it's just you realise that we keep ourselves in this sort of trap. And I always say to people with a belief, it's often adopted or given. As in, like, I'm working with someone at the moment who has been given this belief. Someone's actually told them this thing. So we got evidence that someone has said, you're this. But often what I find is, especially as kids, our brain, we develop beliefs. No one ever tells us it, but we tell ourselves it because we prefer to think there's something wrong with us than our caregivers and our environment. And it's really interesting when you coach someone, and it's the only time we venture into the past with the coaching, just to go, well, where did that belief come from? And they go, well, I was told it. And you go, who told you it? When was the first time you heard it? And then suddenly they're like, well, actually, I don't think anyone's told me it. And they realize just their younger version of themselves adopted it to protect themselves. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
suddenly they go, well, I don't want to keep that now. And they realize it is theirs and it's not been given. So it's interesting to see, I find, where those beliefs have come from.
It reminds me of an early client that I had who I was working with him and his team, and the message I was getting was that my client was obsessed with money. And I knew it wasn't because we'd done a motivational map and I knew it wasn't driven by money, but the message they were getting was it was all about money. It turns out that he didn't like anybody owing him money and he didn't like owing anybody else money. So when I invoiced him, he paid me the next day, which was nice, but quite astounding. That's not the norm. But the trouble was that when he raised an invoice to a customer, he was literally on edge from the moment he raised it to the time they paid. And so
Yeah.
that actually, so the team felt that he was literally talking about money all the time, saying, "Have they paid? Have they paid? Have they paid?"
Mm.
Really, what he'd want was he wanted the money in the bank, so he felt comfortable that the money was in the bank, so he could pay his bills. And
Mm.
ultimately, he brought that back to something back in his past that at the time was like I said, well, thanks for sharing with me. I can't really help you. That's not obviously I'm not here to help you with that. But he realised that something in his business was being held back and a bit
Mm.
affected by something that was something back in his early childhood, about 5 years old, I think it was like that. So we never know how these things sort of manifest, but it's really interesting when it does. And if you can help people sort of overcome these things, it's a great thing to be able to do. So Jonny, what I'd like to know a bit more about is actually how you're going to go about setting up this business, because I think
Mm.
being a police officer and then running a business, we're almost polar opposites. I don't know whether you're already finding this, but so there's like a mindset that we come across with people that are employed, and then you sort of have to make this sort of mindset shift when you become a
Mm.
business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself. So I'm just interested in how you're sort of managing that at the moment, because it's quite early days for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and is and what I find really interesting is you start off with something. Like for me, it wasn't like I want a business, and it wasn't just like some people are just looking for anything to do as a business.
Mm.
It started off as an interest, as in like, oh, this is really good, and I just loved what it did for me. And then I had lots of limiting beliefs about whether I could go out and start a business, but I just started just literally. offering it to people, for free initially to get practice and then paid. But what I find really interesting is, even though it's so different, it's so similar. So, for instance, like when I joined the police because I love speaking to people. I loved going out there, running around after criminals, jumping on them, doing all the fun stuff. But then, in amongst all that, was all this paperwork and IT stuff, especially the IT paperwork I could deal with. But like when suddenly you had to start working out what was wrong with your laptop, and I used to be like, "Oh, I didn't sign up for this."
Mm.
And what I realized in the police was, as soon as I learned to love the bits that I thought I shouldn't have to do, my job became a lot more fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that is the same with my business. So I just love coaching people. I love talking to people. I like helping them solve problems relatively quickly. But then what I realized was, oh, that's just one part of it. You then got marketing, you got sales. And I have the same thoughts about that. I just go, oh, I don't want to be doing adverts, and I just want to go and help you. I just want people to come to me. So that is the bit, then realizing that to do this bit you love, you have to do this other bit which you
Yeah.
didn't necessarily sign up for.
Yeah.
And so in some ways it's so similar. And I use my detective. I realize as a detective, I can use those skills. It's just working stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. But for me, it's about fighting that rush. As in, like, suddenly I find my coaching, I'm really confident, and I'm pretty confident I can coach anyone on anything. But when I talk about marketing and sales, I'm like, because I don't have so much interest in it, I realize I'm elongating that process. If I just dived into it and got more interested in it,
Mm.
it would be easier. So it's that learning to go out and get over that perceptive sleaziness of sales and realize sales isn't sleazy. As in, if I go out and I can market and I can sell, I can help more people.
Mm.
And especially coming from the public sector, where you think if you care, you give your all, and you give it for you give it for nothing. Even though we get paid for being in the police, there's a sense of you don't go in there for the money. There's a lot. You can earn a lot more money doing other things
Yeah.
than going into coaching, where you go, actually, there's a real benefit for people paying a higher price. I've
Mm.
tried all the different prices, but getting yourself over that you somehow think like, if you really cared, wouldn't you do it for free? Wouldn't you do this for free? And
Yeah.
it's addressing all of that, really. And whilst I'm still in it, I'm in the police 1 minute with almost like one mindset, and then I'm coming through into this building the business with the other one.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's been quite an interesting journey. Almost one time it's quite this realization of, oh, it's not quite all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
And that's the thing for me, is I've realized so much about the brain, about how it predicts this future. Whatever you're thinking about doing, it predicts it. This could be so much better. I'm just going to be sat here coaching. It's not going to feel like work.
Mm.
And then suddenly you go, actually, to do that, I need to do this bit over here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna wind back a bit there because you mentioned sales and then you talked about sales being sleazy, and obviously you said it's
Yeah.
not. It shouldn't be like that, but that is the perception, isn't it? When people have not been in the world of business and they've come from an employee, that is, along with marketing, those are the two things that they need to get their heads around with regards to. Marketing is not about advertising yourself. It's just about getting out there, doing what we're doing today, just talking about what we do.
Mm.
But selling, it shouldn't be about anything sleazy. It should be just about finding someone that's got a problem and you can help them. And you just tell them, well, if you like my help, this is how I do it and this is how much it is. So would like to help you, but understand if it's not. So it's just a transaction. It's the same as, when we go into a shop, everything's presented and everything's got a price on it, and you just decide whether the price is right, don't you? And I think we overcomplicate things, especially when we're selling a service as opposed to a product, because it's not tangible. People could put any sort of value on it, but ultimately, I think coaching is about how effectively and how fast you can solve a problem for somebody, isn't it? And the value of that is, who can put a price on it, really? And I suppose that's the thing. It's pricing something that is so intangible and has different value for different people, I think.
And it's interesting because I had a marketing coach. She said, "Gosh," she said, "some of the analogies you use in comparison with sales." So the classic was the car salesman, and you always with sales, I think you think you're being because that's often happens, isn't it? You've got a car and you're being sold something you don't want, and I get so obstinate. Even then, if this person is giving me a great deal, I won't have it. So,
Mm.
but and the other one was I said once, it feels like if you've got something that really helps people and you're charging for it. I said it feels like that drug dealer who's got that person hooked, and she was like, "Crikey, no wonder you have a trouble with it if you're thinking that." But I realised it's not that because I'm not selling to everyone, and actually the people that want it,
Mm.
what I've realised is they like investing in themselves. And actually, what I found was when I had an issue with sales, and I was going, no, 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 I'll do it for nothing. I'll do it really cheap. That's fine. Those people found it really difficult because they felt like they were taking up my time. And even
Mm.
though I loved doing it when I first started, they felt awkward. And actually, as soon as they could go, I'm paying you this money, they then almost expected this service back. And they go, now, and also I realized they liked that they could say, I've invested in myself and I've got
Definitely.
this result. Yeah, and
There's
it's so I've
definitely a
got.
psychological connection with people that have invested money and the outcome that they get. And it's when people haven't invested their own time. I see the difference between when a client has directly paid me or they've had it paid for by somebody else. There is
Mm,
definitely a difference because they have fully invested, they put their own time and their own money in, and they want an outcome. Whereas if someone else is paid, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I haven't really lost anything because somebody else paid for it. But it does make a
mm.
big difference. So psychologically, it definitely does. Johnny, I'm going to give you the opportunity to sit back a little for a couple of minutes because
I
I'm
love it.
going to just talk about the 7-step process in my book and link it to a few things that we've been talking about so far. So if you've not been on the podcast before, this is the 7-step model that I talk about in my book. There's 7 steps, there's 7 chapters, and there's 2 other chapters as well. And those chapters are about looking after yourself and also enjoying the journey. And I'm sure that's going to be something that Jonny will be referring back to because ultimately, with anything that we're trying to achieve, it's not a smooth incline. It's there's going to be some bumps in the road, and we've got to enjoy those bumps in the road as well as the good bits. So let's just think about the things that we've been talking about today with Jonny. So I think, as always, it's always important to understand ourselves. Jonny's revealed to his attitude that he used to have for coaching, and now he's an advocate and uses it every day. So we have to be able to put up the mirror, understand ourselves, and sometimes the things that we believe are actually not helping us. So we need to avoid that. Next step, evaluate, understand where we are, where we want to go, and make sure that we know which sort of direction we're heading, and realizing that there's steps in the road that we've got to take. Action is not a step I talk about much, but action is about just putting things into practice and see how things work out. So once you've tried things out and seen whether they work or not, some things will work, some things won't, and that's where the next step comes in when we systemize and make sure that things that we are reliant on, the things that really need to happen in our business, is important to systemize those things so they happen automatically. And sometimes we need to use that with regards to the things that we don't particularly want to do in our business. So we've already talked about sales and marketing is a challenge for most, particularly coaching and training and all that sort of world. So systemizing that and maybe outsourcing it to somebody else that has a particularly good skill in that might be and also a good thing to do as well. And I'm just going to talk about things that actually do catch us out are often the things that least motivate us. So the things that we've already talked about is here. The star motivator is about recognition and getting social esteem, and it's the motivator which is most closely linked to our drive for marketing and getting noticed. So if that is a low driver, automatically it will probably drive us not to pay too much attention to getting noticed, and so that could have a knock-on effect. So our lowest motivator can have a big effect on our the way we set up our business and how we run it. So we want to make sure these don't catch us out. Another common one I come across, particularly in coaching, is low drive in money and material satisfaction. It might not be initially an important factor in their business, but if we don't make sales, then we don't obviously cover our costs, and then ultimately we can't do what we're trying to do. Ultimately, is to make more of a difference and have a purpose around our business. So by selling more, making more sales, then allows us to make more of a difference, which is ultimately what we want to do. Even though sales and making money isn't our primary driver, it actually allows more of the things that we want to do to happen in our business. So there's a quick overview of the 7-step model and particularly how motivation has a factor in that. Jonny, before you go, any comments on what I've just shared?
Yeah, I think one of the key things I've found is, and I think it's one of the things that people, I don't know if you find this, but they struggle with most. And I coach on it, I teach it, and then really got to sort of think I'm not doing it myself, is the evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Evaluation and celebration, and how that really accelerates your growth. Like because often what I would do is I've done something, now let's go for the next thing. Whereas when you take that time and evaluate, and I always ask just a few questions like, what's going well, always first, what's not going well, what did I learn, what am I going to implement, and what am I celebrating? And I'm amazed at how much it accelerates you to want to do more when you just pause, look at where you've come from, and go, actually, because we don't notice how we've changed, do we? That's what the big thing is. I look at me 5 years ago. So I came across coaching 2019, certified 2020. I remember sat on the sofa. I hung up 4 times when I was going to pay for my coaching certification.
Right,
I was like, and when my first coaching client, I was sweating. I didn't know what I was doing, and now I would never public speak. I hated it. I walked off stage my first one after 10 minutes, which was supposed to be an hour.
Right.
And now I stand up in front of 120 people and I love it. And you forget who you've become. And that's really what I think is the important bit, because that's the bit no one can take away from you, isn't it?
Brilliant. Yeah, great summing up there, Jonny. Great to hear that. So thank you for your time today, Jonny. Really enjoyed it. Sadly, the time is running out and we've got to go our separate ways. But thank you for giving up your time and sharing what you're doing. I think it's brilliant what you're doing. And hopefully we can catch up again very soon.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. It's been great. Thanks for having me on.
There we are. Jonny, he's the police burnout and stress coach. So get in touch with him. Not only if you're in the police, but anything that we've talked about today you think he might be able to help with you with, then feel free, obviously, to get in touch with him. And if you've got anything about what we've been talking about today, then if you are on LinkedIn, then use the comments. If you're on YouTube, again, use the comments, and we will get back to you and answer any questions from either of us. Just to reiterate then, just to remind you, the 7-step process that I talk about is in my book, which is available from Amazon or direct from me on the website. If you'd like to contribute to the Motivated Business Show, keep it on the road, as it were, buy me a coffee is a great way to do that. It's only a few quid, and any contribution is well received, and there's a QR code there which you can scan, go straight to the page, click, and if you buy 2 coffees, then I will be more than happy to send you a copy of my book as a thank you. So there we are. That's episode, I think it's 11 now. That's done and dusted. So I hope you got some value from it, and we'd really love to hear from you if you've got any comments about what we talked about today, and I hope you got lots of value from it. But until the next episode of the Motivated Business Show, I bid you farewell. Have a great day and take care.